Well, for some analysis, we can speak to Jean-Baptiste Monnier, the vice president of Paris-based think tank, the Asia Center, and a specialist on China. Good morning, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Good morning, Alison, and good morning to everyone.
First, just how significant is this thawing of ties between Canada and China?
It's a strategic reset. It's a new tone. And after years, as you mentioned, of tension, especially starting with the Huawei dispute that started back in 2018, the CFO and the daughter of the founder of Huawei was taken into custody, into imprisonment for years. And then the Chinese replied by capturing two Canadian businessmen in China for years, and so this was the start of the technical war. And there was also disputes, personal issues between Xi Jinping and Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, that culminated in the live argument on TV between the two leaders in APEC and in Indonesia. That was bad. So the optics are certainly a lot better in the background of the Trump administration. And you've mentioned the announcements, so they are not as big as they could be, but it's a new tone for sure.
And to what extent is it driven by the United States?
Well, the tariffs, of course, are the key drivers, and both countries are facing Chinese American tariffs. And so the enemies of my enemies are my friends, sometimes can be said. So that is driving the countries to perhaps reset some of the WTO order by reducing tariffs. The WTO has been broken into pieces by the Liberation Day tariffs. And so that is a new world order that is being called by Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. And the Chinese would like this to become a new vision. So Mark is calling for regional agreements if the WTO is indeed now dead and buried, which is not yet the case, but there is certainly some new dynamics between these two countries that can be seen.
You said China wants this to become a new vision, but given that there are these broader East-West rifts in the world, how far can it really go? I mean, isn't the U.S. still Canada's more natural ally?
Oh, for sure. And Mark Carney is very careful in avoiding challenging the U.S. directly. But there is a thread that can be seen with the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that China is now invited to join. It was originally said to be all except China. That was the Obama years, and then Trump pulled the plug on this. So the U.S. moved out. Chinese are invited. The UK is now part of it, and there is a mention by Carney to indeed include more European the Europe into this, which we'll have to see. But as you can see, this is now more transversal agreements by groups of countries as opposed to world organizations that are forming.
And can you talk a little bit about, that changing system? I mean, if we're moving to relying more on small groups, bilateral trade deals rather than big blocks, I mean, is that only going to benefit everyone? Are there any downsides? Kind of what is that future going to lead to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fait accompli. The Americans, the superpower, is indeed moving directly into this confrontational situation of bilateral agreements instead of world agreements, and we have to accommodate with that. So, of course, some of these agreements will be done without the United States, and they're happy with that. So that's the new form that it's taking, and it's much more complex. The WTO has been a major opportunity for China. It was not meant to be that way, but they've indeed reached $1.2 trillion of trade surplus in 2025. And this is just unbearable now. You have to remember, Canada is actually getting a trade surplus out of China. So there are not many countries that are able to do that, but they have natural resources, they have canola, they have oil, they have natural products. They they can ship. And the oil is probably going to be a good opportunity for both of them, as Venezuela and Canadian oil are very similar and interchangeable, provided it's properly refined.
All right, we'll be following what their partnership brings. Jean-Baptiste Monnier, thank you again so much for bringing us your analysis this morning. That was Jean-Baptiste Monnier, the vice president of Paris-based think tank, the Asia Center, and a specialist on China